Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Brattleboro Citizens Breakfast. So welcome. We have the candidates for Select Board with us today. Before I start, I wanted to say something that, just to take maybe a moment of silence. When you checked in today, you may have realized that Leah Young was not there, and she passed away about 2 weeks ago. There are no services, from what I understand. There might be some announcement down the line. But just take a moment and remember Leah, and thank you, Lefford. Let me explain a little bit of what I think the ground rules are going to be for this. There are 3 candidates, David Cadran, Brandie Starr, and Tim Wessel, running for the two one-year seats on the Select Board. So there are 3 candidates, David Cadran, Brandie Starr, and Tim Wessel, running for 2 one-year seats on the Select Board. And David Schoales, who is running unopposed for a 3-year seat. David is an incumbent on the board, David Schoales is. So what we're going to try to do is to give everyone a chance to do a direct presentation for about a minute or 2. Maybe I'll ring a bell about a minute and a half into it. And I would like to ask folks to address one of the questions that was on the list in their direct presentation. And that question is, what is the main priority which you intend to pursue as a member of the Select Board? Because that certainly is a general enough question for an introduction. Then we had some other questions that were submitted prior to this event, and I went around and got some votes. So I've scored those, and it seems like there's a lot of interest in the question concerning housing, concerning recycling, and concerning climate change. So we'll probably start off with those questions afterwards and give about a minute for response, but we can work that as we work that. Sharing one other quote before we get started, not to belabor this, from Paul Wellstone, who died 14 years ago last October. I don't think politics has anything to do with left, right, or center. It has to do with trying to do right by people. And I think at the local level, I think that's what guides us. We won't talk about other levels at this point. Let's start. How do you want to start? David, since you're a 3-year incumbent, starting with your brief introduction and what your main priority is.
Try to be very brief because unless somebody writes me in or doesn't ever vote for me, you're kind of stuck with me. And I'd rather let you hear from these 3 people. But I will briefly say the things I want to focus on. We did energy audits over the last few years. Took a long time to get through it. We got the results. I'd like to see us act on those so we can see some long-term tax savings from lower energy use. I'd like to see us identify systematically the costs of the services that we provide to various nonprofits in the town so that we can consider some method of getting revenue from those nonprofits for the services that we deliver. I don't know how that would happen. I would just like to work with other people to make that happen. The economic issues around the town and around the region are complex, and there are a lot of different suggestions about how to do it. But the biggest shortage is people who are skilled or qualified for the jobs that are available and the jobs that are coming. And I would like to see the town play a much more active role in that process. Again, other than internships for some of the town positions and giving people some work experience, I don't have a lot of concrete suggestions, but there are some really smart people around here. And if we can work as effectively together going forward as we have in the past few years, I think we can make progress on that. Getting people out of poverty, not just giving them services, is a long-term goal. It's very complex as a municipality to figure out how we're going to do that because it's not really our job. But it is our job because if we don't, then the town just continues to suffer in taxes and police costs and people dying of overdoses. Just gets worse. So that wasn't very brief.
Davey Cadran, I'm sure a lot of you have seen me in town. I no longer work there, but I think a lot of you know me from the food co-op because I was there for the better part of a decade. I'm excited to be running again. I ran in 2013. One of my major planks is economic development, and one of the examples that I would like to see us work on as a board is that the Massachusetts Department of Transportation is studying buying some locomotives from the MBTA and establishing commuter rail from Greenfield to Springfield, which would tie into the Springfield to New Haven commuter rail that's coming online. And there has been some talk at the state level in Vermont about working with MassDOT to possibly have that commuter line come up to Brattleboro. And that would open all kinds of opportunities for people to look at jobs in Northampton and Springfield and still be able to live here and enjoy our community. So that is one thing that I would like us as a board to kind of push along and advocate for. And you'll hear some of my positions on other things, so thank you very much.
Some of you know me from around town as well. One of the big things for me about Brattleboro is to make sure that we are healthy and we have good vitality moving forward. I think Brattleboro has all the pieces that it needs to build a strong, forward-thinking community that can attract workers and entrepreneurs from other areas to come here, live intentionally, enjoy the things that we're proud of, celebrate the beauty and diversity of this area. We have a large aging population, and we also have a significantly sized, economically depressed population. At some point, we need to make sure that the middle is big enough and strong enough to shoulder some of the taxes that are going to be needed to do some of the infrastructure upgrades and some of the movement of things around town. It's just the way it has to be. The only real revenue in town is growth of people that are coming in, buying homes, paying taxes, taking out loans, so that we can start moving forward on things. The days of Brattleboro being a mill town have kind of passed us, and we were really proud of those days. It's time for us to kind of come together as BDCC, SEVEDS, the town, Downtown Business Alliance, and decide what are we going to be as a town? How are we branding ourselves to people who are coming out of colleges with degrees in green energy and tech, so that they might want to come here and maybe start their business here, even if it's a business that employs 10 people with some telecommuting, have it based right here in Brattleboro. Could we be a hub for green energy and innovation and tech jobs?
I think just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Tim Wessel. Can you hear me all right? I am so used to being back there, where you are, behind the camera. So I'm not a big fan of speaking in front of crowds, but just as a little background, I own Vermont Films Group. I do films and videos on a national level and also on a local level for clients. I moved to Vermont only 16 years ago. I say that only because a lot of you have been here for a long time. And speaking of the term hub town, in my former life, I had a wife and a son, and we built a house in the Putney Woods. Just the kind of thing that when you come from New Jersey, your friends tell you you can't do. But we figured out how to do it. And then when we got divorced, everybody, the family, moved to Brattleboro because Brattleboro was our hub, literally with friends and with extended friends that became family members. And when I moved here, I became a renter, so I know what it's like to be a renter. And then within 2 years, I bought a house down on Frost Street, so then I knew what it was like to be a homeowner and try to renovate that house. You might actually, some of you might know it, the Cava building, the former Cava building on Frost Street. Big red Victorian, glorious house, which I'm still slowly trying to renovate. I think, well, to speed things up, I'm just trying to give you a little bit of background, but I think my point is that I really feel like I have some perspectives from being a renter and from being a homeowner and now a landlord, because I've now moved to High Street and I rent out my Frost Street house. So housing is a big priority for me, finding the nice balance where young people can move to the area, find a good job, and feel like they can afford to live here. I think it's a big problem. It affects everything in our town, from the kind of businesses we can draw here and have the sort of workforce that they need to find and to have available to them, and to retain that workforce into the future and stop this sort of story we hear a lot of young people moving out and needing to find jobs and raising a family elsewhere and then hoping someday to retire back to Brattleboro. I really feel like we need to sort of complete that link between all ages. And I have some ideas on that, although a little pushback. When I saw that question, I was thinking, you know, I don't want to step in my first experience on the select board and have a strong agenda, because my priority is what is good for the town. And that's, I mean, I love this community, and I feel like when you first join the board, you have to have a little bit of get up to speed attitude. Thank you. And so that's not sort of a politician's answer. That's more of like, we have to really work together to do what's best for our town.
So the first question is sort of a hidden question. I did have a ghostwriter on some of these, former chairman of the select board, sitting over there at Sergeant at Arms. This question came in, and I thought it had like two meanings. So I'll read the question, and I'll sort of tease out the meanings. So it's about recycling, but it's also about how to increase timely citizen involvement. Timely citizen involvement. Were the people of Brattleboro aware at the time of the consequences of the vote concerning the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District Materials Recycling Facility, affectionately called the MRF? Specifically, the removal of the roll-offs at Fairground Roads at BUHS. If yes, what evidence do you have that they were aware? And if no, why not? And a follow-up question. What accommodations can now be made for those residents who are regularly using the roll-offs on evenings and weekends? And by June, we'll find out that those roll-offs are gone.
About how to get timely information, I don't know. I asked when I first got on the select board 4 years ago, I asked if we couldn't put together some kind of a website or some method of getting information out to people so they would know that was what was happening. And I was kind of spanked for that and accused of wanting to put the town into the news business, so I let that go. And maybe we can figure out again some way to get information out. Getting it in the Reformer doesn't work, getting it on BC, it works for some people, the Commons works for some people, BCTV works for some people, like Brattleboro works for some people. Nothing, we don't have Walter Cronkite anymore to look at just to find out what's going on, so I really don't know. But, and people are busy, so I don't know how to make that work, but I'm perfectly willing. In fact, we've decided that if anybody's got a good idea that we can go forward with to get started on that. As far as the roll-offs, there were 6 or 7 meetings, there were 7 months of regular reporting and articles and conversations on the select board about what we wanted to do and what we wanted the waste district to do. And so a lot of information got out, but people, again, if you don't look at it or see it or read the minutes, then you're probably not going to know it. If it's not prominent in the paper, you're not going to know it. The roll-offs were costing Brattleboro a lot of money. They were the most prolific producer of recycling in the county because Vernon and Guilford put all their stuff there, as well as most of the apartment buildings in town, and a lot of people that just found it more convenient than going to Fairground Road. We were unable, after several efforts, to get the waste district to figure out another method of assessment that would make it so that we didn't have to pay for all of that. And it was unsuccessful. And the MRF was going to close no matter what. The question was, how is it going to happen? What's the process going to be? And the process was a little clumsy, but it's where we are now. As far as once those roll-offs are gone in June, your option is, if you can't recycle curbside, which if you live in the town of Brattleboro, in less than a 4-unit building, I believe you can recycle completely every week, and your garbage is every other week. So that's not going to change at all. If you have stuff that you have to take to more than you can get on the curbside board, you want to, and you have to go out to Fairground, to Ferry Road, out to the dump, and recycle it there or throw it away there. And I don't remember what else was in the question, but the recycling services and waste services are not going to change a bit in the town of Brattleboro. So,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Will the same roll-offs be available at Ferry Road?
yeah, nothing's going to change at Ferry Road. That's a money generating, convenience center generates income. It's not a problem in the district.
I was working too, and I wasn't deeply involved in watching what was going on with the recycling and the roll-off issue. I occasionally would take recycling to those, the one over at the high school. I think for me, this is sort of indicative of how there's going to be changes that come down the pike, especially this one was, recycling is dominated a lot by the money that happens with how much recycling is worth, how much it costs to the town. So there's going to be changes like this, and I think we have to be flexible for those changes. And if something doesn't work and people really don't like it, we have to be open to changing how we address this issue. It's not something that is ever set in stone. We have to, I had somebody come to me the other day and say, you know what, for people with babies, going to twice a week trash pickup is really tough because they have diapers and they have all kinds of things that are very stinky in times when it's not quite as cold as this. So I think my main message is flexibility. We try things, and if it doesn't work, we change it, because we're not going to get stuck in the dirt and not be able to be flexible for the residents.
God bless. So recycling. No, I don't think people knew what was going on. I don't think people often know. I think there's a population, as was said, that is on iBrattleboro. BCTV does a great job. I think people do watch the videos, but it's really hard to get in front of people. I do marketing and branding for a living, and I can tell you that you cannot get in front of people. We are bombarded all day long with information, and we're very busy. So anything that's like passive communication, like a posting of a link on BCTV, or going to iBrattleboro or going to the town's website is not enough anymore. I think that the select board needs to run on social media. I think if you sent out, don't forget to vote, don't forget tonight, don't forget this is your issue, over and over again, where people are, when we're at work and we're bored, we're on Facebook a little bit, we're on Twitter a little bit, that's where we are. So if you want people to know to hear your message, you need to go where they are. The times of expecting them to come to you to find your message is over.
Kidding. I 1000% agree. It is impossible to get in front of people. There are, with 20, 30 different ways that even a small business has to, and that spans between physical and digital. The other thing is you have to want people who want to participate. I was on the planning commission. We rewrote the zoning regulations for the first time since the 1980s. No one showed up to any of the meetings. James, once in a while, to be a cheerleader, which was awesome. I miss James very much. And then all of a sudden, when it went before the select board, everyone came out of the woodwork saying how it was terrible, it was awful, blah, blah, blah. And all these volunteer people who aren't getting paid are sitting there like, well, where were you when we were writing this? And it's not because we didn't post it. We did all the traditional stuff in the newspapers, online, on BCTV. Every meeting was recorded. It's just, people are busy. I mean, you can only do so much for transparency and participation. As for the second part of that, which was the actual recycling, I understand that it's hard for people sometimes to get up to Ferry Road to do that, and it was very convenient for people. Tim kind of said it best, it's an economic question too, it's macroeconomic. When oil is cheap, the cost of creating new plastic and glass and all that drops, which makes recycling less attractive, and we lose money. So part of me is also kind of happy to see the roll-offs go, because I thought it was kind of a blight in that area. I lived in that area for all growing up, so it was kind of disgusting to me to drive past that every day in a residential neighborhood. But it is what it is, and I think we do have to be open to trying new things, and maybe we'll be able to bring them back in the future.
Candidates even mentioned that housing is a priority. But what is the town's role in this? What might the town do about the affordable housing shortage? What about housing for people who are on SSI or SSDI, or whose earned income is very limited? And what about the growing issue of homelessness in Brattleboro? What's the town's responsibility to address those issues?
So these were three questions all separated out, and I have to say that I answered them that way, and I liked it because to me there's a difference between affordable housing and low-income housing. That's before we get to the homelessness question. Affordable housing is people moving in here, looking to buy a home and being able to afford it, or renting a home and being able to afford it. If you're living on SSI and or as the question said, under $600 a month, there is no affordable housing. That is low-income housing. And then we roll in homelessness. So if I start with affordable housing, housing and rental costs are directly tied to the property taxes. Some of that is set by a state code, some of that is not. Until we have a larger pool of people paying taxes, the burden will always be heavy on our current taxpayers, including landlords, who are then going to have to pass that on to the people that are coming into town. Most young people, when moving to a town, rent for very practical reasons. The cost of rent is very high, and I see no relief in the immediate future for that. I think organizations such as Wyndham and Windsor Housing are doing a good job, and I'd like to see other ideas and other proposals, because I think until we really solve our main issue of spreading out tax burden a little bit better, I'm not sure how we address the affordable housing issue. When we talk about low-income housing, I want to first talk about homelessness. Being a town that is known for being a very liberal and loving area, and also sitting on a highway, means that we will always have an influx of homeless people that are staying here. People find it safe to come here. If you couple this with a growing drug and alcohol epidemic, you have a recipe for a further homeless and now even more struggling population. If you really want to know what I would like to do, I would like the town to invest in tiny houses. I have been homeless. I can promise you that when you are living in your car or living on the street, you are not looking for a way to take advantage of government services. You are not looking for a way to find a job. People need to be in a home. They need to take a shower. They need to lock the door, go to sleep, feel comfortable. Then, when they wake up in the morning, now you can take them to the Vermont agencies where they can find help. Now you can get them straight out with a job. But you cannot expect people living on the sidewalk to just jump up and want to be involved in the society that they don't know how to enter. So that's a big answer, is house them. But it's the only answer that I find to not be either a Band-Aid or a way to be resentful. If you don't want them on the streets, lift them off the streets. And it's the same answer that I have for low-income housing. Put these tiny houses up. I actually had a woman who had this great idea for this sustainable area with gardens and housing and growing things. Her idea was hemp. It's fabric. It can be used in many different things. Why are we not using things like this? Why are we not putting people to work in areas like this? We have open lots that we can be doing things. I bet there are brilliant people that worked in the Tiny House Festival that could come in this table right now and drop a proposal in front of us that would be well thought out and doable. But we have to look at it.
All right. Well, there's kind of two parts to this. It's what we're doing now and what we could be doing. And I think that there are some things that we're doing now that is very good. I believe that the Housing Trust is doing a very good job, especially at rehabbing a lot of older buildings in town and preserving them. That being said, I think that there is more that can be done. I would like to see that Housing Trust bring some new units online entirely. They did that with the co-op a bit, because it is partly a supply and demand problem. The vacancy rate in town is around 2%, which is extremely low and which drives up housing costs. One of the proposals that I would like to look at is a 5-year local property tax exemption for new units of housing that are brought online. This would kind of give a kick in the pants to some people who maybe have been sitting on the fence about building a home here or creating new apartments, and would help bring a new housing supply online, which would hopefully help kind of balance out or moderate some of these increases in the costs of housing. As for the homelessness question and the low income question, I think that the transitional housing, the redevelopment of the old motel up on Putney Road is a great start. I feel like transitional housing, the idea of transitional housing tends to get lost in the affordable housing question in a lot of communities. I don't think a lot of communities think about transitional housing. So I'm really interested to see how this goes, and maybe we can expand upon that if it's a very successful model.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of Groundworks Collaborative. The project you mentioned at the Lamplighter Inn is terrific, I think. I was pushing for this project where they were going to have an overnight shelter on Frost Street, very close to my now rental house that I told you about. But unfortunately, I ran into some issues, some of it being NIMBY issues, if you want to be undelicate about it, but others, it was a financial thing. So I really think that new project is very exciting. I think it would be great if we had another one of those projects soon and a little closer to town, because transportation is going to be an issue.
Sorry.
Going back to the overall issue of housing, I think, the Select Board is definitely a grantor when it comes to Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, and we have to be very careful, though, to not be on the backs of the taxpayers here in this town. So we have to be very creative, and people have been very creative when it comes to putting together funds. I want to learn more about the turning your own house into rental properties, because there's a lot of opportunity out there and a lot of grants, small grants that would really come in handy for local homeowners to make that happen, because the 2% rate that you cited is just, that's so low, and I'm knowing how much competition, as a landlord, I know how much competition there is I have a 4-bedroom available, and people are just waiting in line to hear, has anybody moved out? And then with Frederick Noyes, I actually co-own 2 other units, which one is a 5-bedroom and one is a 4-bedroom. And there are just no large apartments for families in this town that turn over at any kind of reasonable rate. So it's definitely something to be worked on. I don't have all the answers, but we have to be committed to it.
I think everything that's been said is really terrific, and the Housing Trust and the Brattleboro Housing Authority have done a lot of good work as well. The issue really is taxes. Is where do we get money to do this? If all of you came to the first Select Board meeting and we started setting our goals and said that housing in this region is a priority, we want the Select Board to get to work on it. We have incredible resources in that municipal building. The town manager's office, the appraiser's office, the assessor's office, the planning office. They all have really skilled, really smart people that can come up with a lot of good ideas and resources, combined with some of the things we've heard here. If you want to make that a priority for the town of Brattleboro, then come and make it be our priority, and we'll take it on. I don't have a solution, but I do know that we have to find other revenues, and we have to avoid our taxes going up any more than they already have. The town taxes in Brattleboro are almost twice that of the surrounding towns. I think everybody knows that. Their school budgets are, some are lower, most are higher. Dummerston, Putney, and Vernon are higher than us. And their municipal costs are way lower. So the taxes in Brattleboro are so high that people you'd have to be stupid to live here, really, because you're going to pay twice as much for the same property. So we've got to find a way to deal with that. One thing that we're going to look at hopefully, unless the new people don't want to, is keeping all of the rooms and meals tax here instead of giving a third of it to the state for the processing costs. We'll have to do it ourselves. It'll take a little more time in the town offices, but we can do that, and we can keep 100% of that. That's $100,000 or so, which is real money. But if we keep having taxes go up, and if, for instance, Act 46 passes, and we vote to merge, we're going to be sending money to surrounding towns for their schools, which is going to add to our burden. And those are the kinds of things that, initiatives that come from the state and come from other places where we can't do anything about it. It just happens. And so we can't just pay attention to what's going on in Brattleboro. We've got to pay attention to what's going on in the state and around the region as well.
There was a question regarding climate change, and then someone caught me this morning with sort of an addendum to that. So there's almost 3 questions, but maybe it's just 3 ways of looking at an issue. I guess the initial question was, should Brattleboro reduce its use of fossil fuels? We oftentimes come up with an issue of the boiler is going down, we need to replace this boiler. But the most cost-effective way in the short run to do that is to take a boiler which uses fossil fuels and put that in there and rehab it. Now, there might be an ideal way of doing it, but that ideal way we can't fund right now, so it doesn't happen. So, can we reduce the use of fossil fuels? Should we? If so, how can we do that in the most effective and most cost-effective manner? And then there was a question which I think I understand. Do you, as a board member, support that Brattleboro should respond or be resilient to changes in climate? How do you get your head around that as a Brattleboro board member, select board member?
One thing for sure is we audited every building in town, and we need to spend a little bit of money to make those investments to get those energy savings. We need to spend that money. We need to pay a little bit more right now, and over the long period of time, we're going to save a lot of money. So I think that's the first thing we need to do. As far as the broader climate questions, it's, obviously getting off fossil fuels is the best idea. I forgot the other one. It was a really good one too.
I think you remember the old adage, think globally and act locally. I think it's more important today than ever before. We all have a responsibility to reduce the use of fossil fuels. We also locally have a responsibility to think of the taxpayers, and if our tax rate goes up anymore, we're going to be losing even more people to our border towns, and in essence, we will become even more of a hub. So bringing it back to practical steps, we really do have to move on those recommendations from the Energy Committee and all those audits. They're very important, and we just have to balance it with what we can accomplish reasonably for our taxpayers. It's hard to do both at once. We just have to keep plugging away at it.
Yes, Brattleboro needs to reduce its use of fossil fuels. It is our job. It is a very serious issue. It's the issue to end all issues outside of, war. It's the thing that kills things, that ruins rivers. I've lived in places where you can't go in the water. We are so fortunate here to have the beauty and the cleanliness that we have, and it is our job to be stewards of that. I think the energy audits need to move forward. I've read them. I will admit, I caution because we read them in a vacuum as candidates. We aren't there. I see a lot of audits, unfortunately, in my job, and generally they come with an exit interview, and very important information comes up with those exit interviews, and it's part of making your decision. So to not have been there, it does take away a dimension of the energy audits that I read, but I read them and they make sense, and we need to move forward with them. Climate change is packaged under a very pretty title, and it can make people feel vague, it can make people feel apathetic. Climate change, what is that? What it is pollution, it's death of our environment. That's not pretty. There are organizations such as the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives that can also help the town for free get a nice baseline of their municipal carbon footprint and give some recommendations. So that's another kind of addition that we could be taking advantage of. There's other free resources out there as well. And really, reducing our carbon footprint over time is going to require a complete dedication from all town departments. and requires further investments to make roads more bicycle-friendly, extend sidewalks in areas. We need to be able to make sure people can still get to work, and this does nothing to address the fact that we are a hub town, so people are driving into our town with their fossil fuels, and there's nothing we can do to stop that. You live in a rural area, you're gonna drive a car. You're not gonna carpool because you're picking up your kids and the groceries and you have to stop at the bank. It's not gonna happen. What can we do to make sure our public transportation is self-sufficient, runs on, French fry oil? I don't remember. There's probably a better name for it. Or electricity, put a trolley back in. We need to look forward, and yes, it's gonna cost money, but we have to do it anyways, so we're gonna have to see how we can offset costs and do it.
About mathematics growing up was that numbers don't lie. They don't. And to that end, every dollar that is spent on energy efficiency reaps much greater savings than what we spend. To me, this makes 1000% sense. This is probably one of the smartest things that government can do, is to make it more efficient. Because when we spend money on oil, on electricity that's not made here, on water that's maybe not from here, it goes somewhere else. That is money that is flying out of our town at a rapid rate. So if we can find ways to make energy more efficient in town, if we can find ways to make maybe some of our energy here, then we can keep that money local. Don't just think about buying local as in like buying your groceries or buying items. You can also buy your energy local. Another thing that I would really love to see that I don't think a lot of people in Vermont in general or New England tend to think about is water efficiency as well, because water is so abundant here. But I think about it, when you use a urinal uses 1.5 gallons of water every time it's flushed. That's a lot of water. And that's just like one of thousands in town. So that adds up quickly. You're using a lot of water here. There are things we could do to reduce our water consumption as well and save energy that way, because it takes energy to pump water and move it. I would also like to see the state roll water into Efficiency Vermont, so that their goal is not just electricity and heating reduction, but also water reduction. People could get more information from us.
You certainly can. You certainly can. I was also going to say, remember to vote on March 7th, which is the important part of this. But yes, do you want to come up to the mark? Maybe I wasn't on the mark.
Yeah. If you would like more information about me as a candidate, including issues and my biography, you can go to votefordavey.com, that's D-A-V-E-Y. There I link to Brattleboro and some other local, Commons and Reformer and TSA and stuff like that who have done stuff on me. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, so you can get in touch with me that way if you want. If you want my phone number, if you really want to talk about something, I'll give you my phone number. So that's how to find out more. Thanks.
Brattleboro asked some really good questions, and I've read everybody's response, and I've read everybody's responses, and so that's a good resource too for some more thoughtful, less off the cuff kind of responses. And call me up. It's 246-1220. I'm happy to talk to you.
I don't have a website, but I made a Gmail account just for this type of stuff. But it does require that you can spell Brattleboro. Kind of filter out people I don't know. So it's brattleborotim@gmail.com. I've also started, all three of us have started candidate pages on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but I try to ignore it. And my phone number is 380-8433, so anytime.
Well, some of you have already found me at my desk, and that's good. I'm easily located. You can also send me an email, please. I know this sounds weird, but please do use my work email because I just get too much through my Gmail account. And it's bstarr@brattbank.com. If you want to talk on the phone or meet up and talk another time, just shoot me an email. You can also find me on Facebook, and you can find me sneaking around on Brattleboro as well. There you are, sir.
Okay. And thank you very much for attending today, and I guess we're not going to be evicted from the room until about 9 o'clock, so if you want to stay around and ask questions informally, or that's fine. And thank you again.
Thanks, Bob.